Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. This is LoreForged, the Ashes of Creation podcast, and the podcast for LoreForged.com. We're your hosts. I'm Jibs. I'm joined by my compatriots, my best buddies, and the other 2/3 of LoreForged, starting with Sunny Ravencourt.
You're very big on fractions. I feel like this is something like, are you trying to make up later in life for like something that maybe just didn't go as well for you in 4th or 5th grade?
I constantly flunked math growing up.
I mean, you're killing the fractions now, though. So well, I feel like, you got your revenge on whatever Mrs. or Mr. Fraction teacher was in elementary school.
That's right. Kash?
I'm not, nobody's counting, but I am just going to say that you have mentioned Sunny first in these introductions for 3 shows in a row. And I want you to know it's noted.
All right. This is episode 4. Did he miss one?
No, 3 up. Well, 2. This is the 3rd episode. Math is hard.
Clearly, he didn't do his math studies like I did on my fractions. What's going on, gentlemen? We're back in the tavern.
I feel like I got beat over the head with a stick for like 15 minutes straight before we started the show because we had a little audio scamp and we fixed it, and it happened to be my soundboard, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, we're good now. Hi, everybody.
We're doing great now, but I want to pause here for a second. Isn't this show 4? Didn't we launch with 3 shows, this is the 4th?
This is the first show of the weekly shows now. So this is the real deal.
We are onto a weekly schedule now from now into eternity.
Eternity.
That was the point you were making, because I thought we were back to the math thing, and I was like, I'm just going to check my head out of this right now.
I feel like that might not be our strong suit.
Do the numbers. Oh... Gentlemen, how has your week been?
It's been good. We have been doing all sorts of fun stuff. It was fun to do the launch. I don't think we could get very far into the show without talking just a little bit about how much fun we had at the launch. We had videos and we had articles on the website and we had the Patreon and the Discord community, and it was all a lot of fun. It's both a relief and a joy to be in the process now instead of looking forward to launch. I cannot say enough about how much better I feel now that we've got the train rolling down the tracks. So it was a lot of fun.
It feels like now is, with all the pre-work that we did to launch this show for Ashes of Creation, now it feels like we can truly just dive into making content. And I think it's a perfect time because in just another week or 2 is probably the biggest developer update ever.
Yeah, August 31st. So it's next week. For those listening on release day, it's this Friday. So I mean, this is a big one. This is a big one. Which is kind of funny because we're showing up right as this just so happens to be happening, which is awesome. So that's gonna be fun to cover. But yeah, big moment for the community.
I feel like with this particular release, that we're talking about the nodes, correct?
Yeah.
We're all talking about that. Okay.
Send notes.
Send notes. Don't send notes. Don't send notes because I know you will. I don't want them. Don't do that thing that we just asked you to do. No, we don't want that either. It is one of those things where I constantly think about this. I constantly think about what life was like for you two guys years ago when you were in this space, and how much more frequent and how deep the news releases are now. Because you're right, we are about to come into a massive dump of information at the core system of this with nodes. And so Kash, just enlighten me a little bit about how you feel that the development, transparency, the whole system is working now.
I think You know what happened last time when we were in the space, and we, real life just kind of hit us, and we had some things going on, and it forced us away from being able to make weekly content. And that's kind of a big deal for us. We want to be a regular show making regular content. And I would say, even though things were clicking along pretty well back then, having stepped away from the space for a little while, I mean, I say a little while, but it's been damn near 3 years. I feel like Intrepid, as a development studio, in relation to their relationship with the community, they have truly found their stride. They have found what is comfortable for them in a release schedule of information for not just the community, but for the content creators within that community. So having that extra 3 years of development time has not only given us a ton more content to cover, but it is really hit at a good time in relation to their studio as well, because like I said, they really seem to have hit their stride. So for us, I really believe that it's the perfect time for us to come in here, especially because just by luck, we've started hitting some really big releases. I mean, look at what they were able to pull off with the Cleric release. Everybody was like, excuse me, what? Seeing Tumok was a big deal for everybody. And now to find that we're getting right when we launch, we're going to get the biggest thing that they've probably released, besides the fact they moved to Unreal 5, is that node system. This is the heart of the game. It's the core of what this game is built around. And I think this is the perfect time for us to have kind of just popped in and been like, hi, we're back. Can we want to hear about nodes?
Truthfully, I think it was a blessing in disguise, this whole thing, coming back to this space 3 years. But yeah, like you were right. It was actually, I think, 3 years to the day on the 21st. So, here we are. And truthfully, I think you're also right with Intrepid. They have definitely hit their stride. And there's this, this is very reminiscent of SWTOR's pre-release to me now. You're kind of getting this steady form of release content. If you're following their socials, you're getting almost daily content. I mean, they're just the social media team with Margaret, everybody just crushing it. But from a content standpoint, when it comes to these releases they're putting out, they're starting to put more shorts out on YouTube. We're seeing these huge heavy hitter streams one after the other. It's starting to, you're kind of starting to feel the old engine of the train, the hype train. Just we're gonna turn the steam up just a little bit more, just a skosh.
It would be okay with me if you never said SWTOR development and Ashes of Creation development in the same sentence ever again.
That's a little unfair. That's a little unfair. The development of SWTOR when we were in the pre-launch phase was good. It was a very exciting and good time. And when they had releases, we were very excited about it.
It was. You're not lying there. However, I've never had a game launch that we've covered ever in my entire life where I still have freaking PTSD from what resulted.
Yeah, but it was definitely exciting. It was always exciting though, because every Wednesday, I'll never forget, I was going to community college to get my business degree, and every single Wednesday they had the drop. I always
this is true.
reading it.
The Wednesday drop, like you said, the Wednesday drop was enormous, JB. I absolutely agree with you that, you were looking forward to it. I was looking forward to it. It was like clockwork. You would get that kind of thing. And I think that Intrepid is on that same path where we're getting these big, massive monthly ones that's kind of replacing the SWTOR Wednesday situation. But we're also, like you said, getting a steady drip of reaction and content and things to just kind of chew and digest in the meantime before these big drops. So it's a great sort of experience to be able to ride along with at this time.
I agree.
I personally, I don't have any confidence in any MMO, no matter how good the development team is, that they're gonna have a flawless launch. I've just been around too long for that. That no matter how good it is and how prepared they are, that the curveballs of an MMO launch are so enormous. So enormous. We're talking like Randy Johnson fastball blow up a bird pitches that you just cannot predict. And there's nothing you can do. And so you just have to roll with these things and be patient. And that is hopefully a sign of a good community, that they understand these kind of things. My fingers are crossed that when we get there, that it goes smoothly. But I don't think that event is related to the other ones.
My glass doesn't look like it's half full, but it's half full. And I agree with what you're saying, but I have not had a development team in a long, long time that I've felt this confident with. They are showing us all the things that, from the perspective of people who are watching the development of this game, they're showing us pretty much everything that proves that they are going to be a team that is on top of that kind of thing. And the reason I ask this, or reason I say this, is because if you watch at the end of these developer updates, there's always question and answer time for Steven. There's never ever a question that he does not have a well thought out, dialed answer for. Now, granted, he is an incredibly eloquent speaker, for sure, but there's rarely something that he does not know about or does not give at least the appearance that the team is all over that very thing, or they've covered it in some meeting somewhere. For that reason, almost that reason alone, I have the utmost in confidence that this team will blow us out of the water with this launch. I think they're going to be ready for it.
I think they'll be ready for it. I also think, look, servers happen. Like, no matter how you slice it, servers always happen. It's just like a part of MMO launches. I'm totally fine with it. Like, I get it. We've been around long enough to know, like, there's never been a launch that's flawless. Never been a launch that's perfect. The servers, there's always a backlog of people sitting in there. Then they start tweeting, I've got 4 hours, hashtag rip. You know, like, for just all the things. And it's just like, you know what, dude? Like, this is the life. Everyone looking at the camera. This is the life we choose to live with MMOs.
A case in point. Case in point, I'll make it quick. I know my stuff's never quick. Anyway, the other day I'm watching videos. I am not going to say what video I watched. I refuse to do that. I saw a video where somebody was upset. They were upset about the fact that they were creating, that Steven, they called him out and said Steven was creating FOMO because these cosmetic packs are limited in time.
Oh,
I'm not kidding you. Like, I had to take a second and just like reposition myself in my chair, and I went like immediately into like fight or flight freaking mode, because I was like, are you effing joking me, dude? How? First of all, they've gotten rid of pay to win, which that's like one of the biggest issues out there with MMOs. People hate pay to win. How do you solve pay to win? You make everything that you release to the public for a monetary cost, a real world monetary cost, be cosmetic only. You don't get any advantage in the game. You don't get like any extra stuff. It's just cosmetic only. They have done this. They have listened to the community. However, somebody's upset because now these things are time sensitive. They want them to be exclusive things that you can get. And there was disdain about this. And I'm just going, are you freaking kidding me? When is the gaming population ever going to be satisfied or happy? Even when developers listen, they're pissed because developers aren't listening, right? What? That one torqued me. And I'm going to leave it there. But that one,
you seem pretty happy about it.
Torqued me. And this is somebody that I've watched with other games before and was like, yeah, right on, man. This guy's pretty cool. Yeah, that one bummed me out.
I think it's like there's something to be said, like, Sonny, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump on you. There's something to be said about, there's a reason why they're limited release. It's so you can create desire, and it further helps fund the game, which further pushes people to buy. It's business. It makes sense. I get why they're doing it. I stand behind the reason they're doing it from a business standpoint. What more do you want?
Exactly. That was my thought. What more do you want?
Yeah. Normally, I would be happy to jump on the Kash is a little too get off my lawn type of guy right now, because it's fun. It's fun to accuse each other of being old and out of touch. But like, this is a business. This is a business practice. And frankly, they solved this one about 15 years ago. This is the solution, people. Like, if you don't want pay to win, you sell things for cosmetic purposes. Back when there was pay to win, I don't think you guys realize how much pay to win sucks.
Oh, God.
Okay? Pay to win is a terrible, terrible experience, and you will never trust anything you do in a game that has that, because you will just always in the back of your mind think, well, that guy just bought all his stuff. That is a terrible gaming practice, but the solution was made. I don't even know what game started to do the cosmetic things, but every one of us in the MMO universe said, yeah, that's fine. We're good with that. Do that. That's great. And I gotta be honest with you, like, how many things are locked behind conventions and limited time things for charities, or, you know, I'm thinking Warcraft skins or mounts or things like that. Like, if you showed up to BlizzCon 2012, you got this crazy Murloc hat or something like that.
Yeah.
If you didn't show up to BlizzCon 2012, then you better hope that way in the future Blizzard themselves releases that on their own internal black market, because you ain't ever gonna see that again. That is FOMO. That is giving people a prize for doing something that they want you to do, and that is how the business world works. Okay? Pay to win is bad. We don't need to go back to that. That's crazy talk.
But FOMO, like, seriously, when I hear that term, like, as
Can we give the
this.
full descriptor for people who don't know what that is?
Yeah, FOMO. I'm really sorry. FOMO is fear of missing out, and I just, when I hear that term, because it speaks to exactly what Sonny was just saying, like, about BlizzCon. Like, if you didn't go to BlizzCon, you don't get the cool looking little Murloc with the gun. You don't get it. It's not going to be your pet ever. And to hear the word FOMO and how people are whining and crying about not getting something because they missed out because of time, or they didn't have the funds. And, like, trust me, I totally get not having the funds to buy some of these packs. They're not cheap. But if you think you're going to see something that you're going to want, plan better. Do whatever you need to do to save the $15 to get you the thing that you want. Like, it's $15, you guys. You probably go to Starbucks 3 times a week. So make your own coffee at home, skip it, and don't make me want to hear FOMO and get a running start and flick someone in the nuts, because that's exactly what I want to do every time I hear FOMO. Plan better.
I think
maybe I'm old.
I think at the end of the day, too, Steven has said numerous times that, look, everything you see here, you can get in game. This is just a different color variation of it.
Even if you couldn't, like, you should be unapologetic about cosmetic stuff that is limited time. Remember, like, what are we doing here? What are we doing in this pre-launch thing with these packs? They're building a fund base to build this game. They're creating demand. If you would have said, instead of using the words FOMO, saying we're creating demand by having these limited time packs, people would say, oh, well, let me look in my macroeconomics book here. Oh, yep, look, it says creating demand is good for a business that's starting out. This is a good idea. FOMO, I'm sorry, like, I cannot get on board with people that are complaining about this. This is a standard practice. This is exactly what I want, frankly, because it's going to drive more and more people to the game. And what are you really complaining about? Like, that's what really blows my mind, is I don't understand what the actual complaint is. Is the complaint that you can't get everything in the game because it is going to go away at some point? Like, this is not new or different or even a complaint. Like it's really hard to it's really hard to wrap my brain around it. I'm kind of done on this. I think Kash is sort of done on this as well. But
No,
like,
I'm still mad.
You got any energy left for the show?
there aren't many things that we're gonna get like a 3 emphatic, hit the button type of moments.
Oh, that's awesome.
But this one is it. You're not gonna get any apologies out of us for creating demand for a game pre-launch.
No, what we are going to get is we're going to get somebody that's like, wow, these guys drew a line in the sand. I'm going to make a reaction to the reaction to the reaction of the reaction video.
We're gonna have to react to that. I can't wait for Asmongold's reaction.
Oh man,
my
it's gonna be Inception.
He's going to look at it and go, these guys are nerds. I'm out.
I'm not wasting my time with these.
I love it.
Clown car.
Oh, all right. Well, everyone, thank you again so much for hanging out with us. We sure do appreciate you. And if you're enjoying your time here, let us know how we're doing. Whatever podcast app you're using. Wow, I should not follow up with that right after that conversation, but I'm doing it anyway.
You definitely shouldn't tell
I am
them
teeing
where
this
to find
right
our
up.
stuff.
But anyway, let us know how we're doing. Leave us your reviews. We sure do appreciate that. That was such an awful idea. All right. So anyway, this week on the show.
Like everybody except for that Kash guy. He's a real ass.
These guys yelled at me for 20 minutes and then asked me to leave a review.
Here's my review.
I'm so offended.
On your show for 10 minutes.
Oh, I love it so much. Anyway, thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. We sure do appreciate you. And so this week on the show, we are answering your mail with our first user-submitted email. And then we are talking about the None Forgotten pre-order package. So we're just going to jump right into this. This comes to us from Dragon42. Dragon says, hey, LoreForged. I'm Dragon Warden 42. I recently saw you guys launch last week, and after listening to your podcast episodes, I decided to write in. What's the deal with the different building styles and cultures in Verra? Can you tell me anything about what inspired the designs in these cities? I'm really curious about how the mix of races and cultures makes everything look so unique. Thanks a bunch, Dragon.
Thanks, Dragon. That's
I
cool.
like that he led into it with the Jerry Seinfeld. What's the deal with building styles?
Sorry, Dragon. No soup for you.
Well, who wants to hit this first? Because there is just a ton of content here. We have so much to talk about that we had to get out the Margaret Crone diction dialogue here to help us pronounce all of the different races. I think we're actually getting pretty good at it. I know Kash is excellent at it because he released all those shorts. JB, I feel like, has got a more solid grasp on this than any other game I've ever seen him play.
Graduated.
It's a bit of a low bar, but he's killing it.
Grab your Webster's dictionaries, friends, because here we go.
Okay, so I'm going to start. We're going to go through these. We're going to go from top to bottom of the races, and we're just going to kind of talk real quick what the basic Intrepid influence was for this. So you're going to start with the Aelin. These are the Aelin, Kash, correct me if I'm wrong, is the human overarching culture, correct? The Aelin are then
Kalar,
divided down into the Kalar and
the Valoon.
And the Valoon. Okay.
Yeah.
So with the Aelin, just generally, they have a French medieval influence. That was their basic thing, is that French medieval. So French medieval to me is Notre Dame. It is your Gothic European, just pointy thing. Like, it looks like if you fell out of a window in any French medieval building, you are going to undoubtedly land on a pointy object and it will kill you. That is, it's the cool sort of Transylvania, I think, look to a lot of stuff.
Yes, and it's funny that you said that, because French, basically, you're right. Was France in the Middle Ages is what this exactly was. And you nailed it when you said the Notre Dame in Paris. But what it's also called, French medieval, is also synonymous with French Gothic, which is that, like, all those like spires, super pointy spires and gargoyles and all that kind of stuff. So if you think like your Transylvania type buildings, that's kind of what you're going to get. And this happened like roughly around like 1140 until about the 16th century. These Gothic cathedrals, kind of like the Notre Dame, started to pop up, and they're really known for their height, like huge, like really, really big, tall, with like flying what do they call them? Buttresses.
Flying buttresses.
Flying buttresses. And the reason that they did that was because they were starting to figure out physics when it came to buildings, and the height and those flying buttresses really helped to distribute the weight of what they used to make these, which was stone. The other thing that was really poignant in a lot of these buildings was stained glass. There was tons and tons of stained glass in these cathedral type buildings. So that really is, I mean, that's going to be your Aelan type architecture.
JB, I'm gonna let you go here, but I want to get this point out before I forget it. This entire thing that we're gonna go through for the next God knows how long is going to be therapy for me, because one thing that I just absolutely hate is, oh boy, I gotta rewind a little bit on this thing. Okay, real quick background. There was a period in my life where I was an attorney, and I would travel a lot to all of these different county courthouses. And some of these county courthouses were built 100 years ago. And as a building ages, you have a decision after about 50, 60 years. You're either going to refurbish it and keep that original flair, or you're just gonna burn it to the ground and start over with something that actually functionally works. And so you had this major difference. You'd either go into a box that had really good air conditioning, or you'd go into these fabulously ornate, hand-carved wooden doors type of places. And I loved those so much more. They are just spectacular to see that kind of architecture. Things like gargoyles, things like just intricately wrought iron, things like that is just a lost art in our world. And so this is probably across the board for MMO gamers. We really like that kind of stuff. Nobody wants to go into a box with great air conditioning in an MMO. They want to go into these ornate and cool places that they're able to see intricate work done.
Isn't that funny how that works? Like the gamer mind works. Like we want to see the things that innately in the real world we could just look at pictures at. But when it comes to gaming, like we want to go into something that's very ornate, not something that has a box window air conditioner in it. And it's, like it's the elaborate is what I tend to gravitate towards. Kind of interesting. So next you've got the Dunir. They have a Nordic cultural influence, so that includes everything from like Northern Europe, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Greenland, Norse mythology, dwarves from Germanic lore. If you've watched the recent 5-minute opinions on Dunes and Kill Dwarves, or listen to episode 3, we talk about it quite extensively. But the architecture, it's very reminiscent, at least from the concept art that we've seen, especially for AshesOfCreation. It's very reminiscent of a very traditional fantasy dwarf. You have those very very sharp lines, very sharp corners. There's nothing really round. It's just very edged. So think rectangular. You see it in their helmets, on the renders, on the wiki. You see it also in the architecture. So think very just not circular, very, no one's watching so they can't see us, but it's very and then
It's very much everything's etched in stone. I mean, right into the side of a mountainside, right? Like, speak friend and enter. It's like that. It's completely that type of Lord of the Rings, Tolkien style door in the side of a mountain type.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Even the way that runes are written, runic letters are typically hard lines. There's not a lot of rolling cursive type of stuff in runes. They're just a series of what way the line is and what's connected to it. Yeah. Everything about that, it reminds me of door frames for dwarves. It's just door frames are so functional in the dwarven world, and if there's going to be something that's ornate, it's going to be just more lines. They're just putting lines on lines. Right. It's very appropriate. When you see it, you know that you are dealing with Nordic dwarven architecture.
Yeah, and really the only tie to to our world is the Germanic lore. Like that's it. It is Norse mythology. That's what all of that came from. Because there's really, I guess there's no inspiration from anything that actually took place. I really hate to say that because I know at some point in our history, dwarves were real. I know it. Hi. Keep your irons under fire. That's my favorite. My favorite. I'm sorry. But you know, anyway, I don't even care if some of this stuff is derived from folklore, because I think that's what gives it even more mystery. So if you look at like this entire list of things that we're going to cover, besides maybe the Nakua, because I think they're probably the coolest freaking race we've ever seen, and we'll get there. But I really think that the Dunir, being the original race on Verra, is going to still hold the title for the most mysterious. I think it's just, well, we have to wait, because Tolnar's not on this list, because we know nothing about the Tolnar artistic influence or architectural influences or anything yet. There's really not much about them. So we might have to hold that hard comment until we get more on the Tolnar, because so far they're pretty damn mysterious. But anyway, I digress. We are going to dive right into the Empyreans. This one's pretty cool too, because the Empyreans have more of a Greco-Roman feel to them. And that derived, like in our own world, this was actually real, you guys. So if you didn't go to history class, then I'm going to give you a little lesson right meow. This was around 500 BC. So basically, when we say Greco-Roman, it's exactly what you think it is. It's the Greeks and the Romans. And the architecture from that was derived mostly from ancient Greece. A lot of their most representative buildings in their architecture were like temples and government buildings. And like the biggest example that I could find was the Roman Senate. And what you're going to see in the Roman Senate is just like if you look at a nickel, or if you look at a penny, which my freaking old eyes can't effing see anymore, all the little details, but they're like tall, ornate structures with these large vertical columns. That's, if you saw it, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Just look up ancient Rome, look up Greco-Roman, and you'll see this type of architecture, just big, giant, like, I don't want to call them ribbed because that might cancel us, but it's, nope. I mean, these particular columns are not ribbed for anybody's pleasure other than
no, he's just leaning into it. He is.
What happened? I blocked out for a second. Anyway, the Empyreans are Greco-Roman, big, tall columns.
I'm going to save you here. It's the Parthenon. That's what you're talking about.
Oh, thank God someone's educated who spoke.
You're talking about the Parthenon, right? You're talking about a square. Oh, wow. That one was to the core.
That really was. You know,
we're going to move past that one, and I'm just going to keep talking about the Parthenon. So the Parthenon is your rectangular building built out of the classic Roman pillars. And the when you get into the Ionian and the other things, sort of subcultures in there, they're dealing with like how the top of the pillar looks. But the Romans were just notorious for stealing all the Greek stuff. They stole all their gods. They just gave them different names. A lot of the architecture, they call it Greco-Roman because the Greeks invented it and the Romans took over the rest of the world and put them up everywhere. So yeah, it's a very classic look. I love it. I do have a question about this though, and this is a big question that maybe you guys can help me out with here. If the Aelin are the sort of overarching culture of humans, and you have the Empyreans and then the Veilun, and the Veilun are very different, then who's building the French medieval stuff?
The Aelins.
Right, but the Aelins aren't their own thing, are they? This is what I'm not understanding. I thought there was two sort of subcultures of Aelin humans. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you see where my confusion lies here?
Yeah, so you have, well, that would be the oh, I see what you're saying, because it says Aelin instead of saying like Kalar.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would be the Aelin humans are the Kalar and the Veilun.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes. So, oh, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
said Empyreans, but the Empyreans are elves. My apologies. I meant the Kalar. So the Aelins consist of the Kalar and the Valoon.
Correct.
And so the Kalar are probably the ones that have the French medieval stuff.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, because it's described in the wiki as Aelin architecture having
Correct.
a French medieval influence. Yeah. So I think what that means is that Aelin, this is just my opinion, I don't know for sure, but my thought is that Aelins as a whole were encompassed with a majority of them were the Kalar, whereas the Valoon were probably an offshoot. As such, it's probably the same with the Dunir and the Nakua. There's probably less of a population of Nakua than there are Dunir dwarves.
Yes, this is
Just
exactly my question, and it works perfectly for the Dunir and the Nakua, right? You have the Dunes and Kill dwarves, and so are all dwarves Dunes and Kill dwarves, and then you just have those two subcultures, and that consists of all the dwarves.
I'm gonna give that a reserved yes, because that's how I understand it. Now, according to Jibs, I'm kind of a dumbass, so I don't know if that's correct or not, but that is how I take it. Thanks, Jibs.
I didn't say that. I just said simple.
You can introduce me second next week again.
I have something special planned already.
I'll bet.
Oh, so when I think of the Kalar and the European influence, I mean, you guys have pretty much already, hit it. But I think the traditional medieval that you see in movies, a lot of stone, a lot of all the castles, everything you already see. There really isn't too much that I can really add to that. Go watch, I don't know, Monty Python. There you go. I mean, that's pretty much it.
You're talking Kalar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The European racial influence for their architecture. So, I mean, truthfully, it's probably one of the less interesting as far as original out of the entire group. So, it's very much more like a Renaissance feel. So, fair kind of thing, it's totally going to be.
Yeah, I think it is less interesting only because we're so steeped in it being,
agreed.
I mean, the average white male American is just a European, right? So
Yeah.
we're just,
boring.
this is our stuff, right? So it's not exotic at all to see that sort of thing. And frankly, it still exists. Like, you can go over there and see most of this stuff in real life. It's not a culture that has been wiped from the earth or they had to excavate to find these buildings. They're just still there. So I would agree with you that while it is interesting and cool, it's probably not on the high list of the coolest of these particular pieces of architecture.
Yeah.
But the next one, on the other hand,
We
you
should
want to do this one, Kash?
No, I think you should take this one because you've expressed a lot of interest in this next one. And I think we'll all just kind of add our own little flavor to this because I flat out, I'm just going to say, even though we might not end up playing this race, this is by far our freaking favorite for flavor.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yes. So this is the Nakua, and the Nakua come as a subculture of dwarves that left the mountains because they just weren't into stone ceilings anymore. I don't know what flipped for some of these dwarves, but they decided to leave the mountains, and they eventually went down to the beach and thought, you know what? This is kind of cool. And so they became island and beach dwarves, which is so spectacular.
Yeah.
This is by far the coolest spin on a race ever in an MMO.
I like it because
Yeah.
they were just like, all right, super dwarfy dwarves, mountain dwarves. And they just said, you know what? F it. They just leave and go forge their own path and own trail, which is totally different from anything they've ever done. It's just, gosh, it's so cool.
I don't even like stout. I want a margarita. Actually,
So they're I mean, it's true, right? Like, you gotta think that the food and drink changed drastically from not being buried under the mountain. So you're gonna have can you imagine a culture of dwarves that don't like salted meat or something and would prefer fish and a fruity drink and a coconut?
I can now.
Gosh. That is some kind of vibe there, man.
It's mind bending, is what it is.
Yeah.
The Nakua definitely get their roots from the Maori, which is a Polynesian culture. All of it. Intrepid absolutely leaned into this one and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go full on Polynesian style. We're going to do the grass. We're going to do the coconuts. We're going to, I don't know if they're going to do the stone carvings the way that you have the moai and things like that, but it's all of it. They didn't decide to hide any of their excitement for making island dwarves. And frankly, we salute you. From LoreForged, we are hats off to you on this particular one. This is a very exciting idea, and we've done videos and articles, and God knows we just will not shut up about it, but it is one of the coolest things that we've seen, to see true Maori island dwarves.
True. And just like in fashion with you loving the Nakua, I know someone who loves the Pyre quite a bit. Not me or you, Sonny.
I do. I love the Pyre, and I'm actually there's a funny thing in here that I kind of chuckled at a little bit, and I didn't know. It was like a fact that I didn't know. But anyway, the Pyre is basic. It is your basic. I don't even want to say basic because that sounds terrible, but it is your traditional wood elf.
Your classic wood elf.
Classic wood elf. I've always played wood elves. Like Bosmer was my thing in the long stretch that we played ESO, and like even now, like we're back in World of Warcraft, and I'm playing a night elf, but he's a woodsy type night elf. That's just how I just love playing elves. Anyway, the Pyre have a Navajo Native American cultural influence, which I was very, very excited about because I live in the Southwest of the United States, and I'm absolutely 1,000% intrigued by Indian Native American culture. I just think it is some of the coolest stuff to know that there were people that lived here before the world became, I don't know, more civilized, more whatever you want to call it. I don't want to even get into that conversation, but these folks lived off the land. They're like the original homesteaders, and they were just crushing it, just doing it. And I absolutely love that thought of living off the land and hunting for your food. And, just everything revolves around family and migrating to where food is. And it's just an amazing culture to me. So anyway, very excited to see Navajo represented here within the class, or within the races of Ashes of Creation. Now, traditionally, their architectural type structures, they lived, and they didn't have any like huge, massive structures or anything. They had hovels, they had domiciles where they sought shelter. I mean, this was a very primitive type of time for a very primitive people. So anyway, what they lived in, they were actually called hogans. That's obviously the English translation for it, but they were dome-shaped buildings that had a inner structure that was made of cedar or pine log, and sometimes stone as the framework. And what they would use as insulation was actually like mud, dirt, and sometimes sod. So they would almost look like a hobbit house at times, especially during the springtime when they could actually carve the sod up and use it for insulation on their houses. So anyway, for all intents and purposes, like a lot of the Navajo lived in mud huts. Like that's what they did. That's what was able to insulate their homes in the Southwest of the United States. And then now in Ashes, obviously they're not going to live in mud huts. So the cultural spin that's going to be on the architecture for the Pyre is actually like more of a woodland spin. So if you could think of like the Mirkwood Elves from Tolkien, or if you could think of things that are just like more organic, like the Bosmer and Elder Scrolls, they had more of like homes built into large trees in Grotwood. So anyway, that's the Pyre in a nutshell and what their architectural influences are.
I think that anytime you're dealing with wood elves, you end up with just a generally more rugged and nomadic experience than high elves. High elves to me want to build just towering structures that dominate the landscape, whereas wood elves almost always are building things that do not disturb the overall appearance of the forest, and they blend very well into the environment. And you know, if you weren't paying attention, you might not even notice that it is there. That is sort of their MO as far as those kind of things. So it does translate very well to the Navajo, because a lot of the American Indians, Native Americans were a bit more nomadic than a lot of other cultures, and so they didn't build towering structures that dominated the landscape because they were moving with the herds sometimes. So that translates extremely well to me.
Yeah, and for me, I think one of the things is that I love elves. Like in any game that I play, I absolutely love elves. And to know that elves is being paralleled with one of my very favorite real world cultures, and that's American Indians, that to me is it's a nod. It's a complete nod to, and it just shows respect for our real world's history. And it just, I don't know, to me, that type of a nod is a very respectful thing. And I know that's going way deeper in it than they probably even planned, but truly that's the impact that they're having here for some people out there.
I think that in addition to the Nakua, the next race that comes to my mind that's very unique from an appearance standpoint is the Valoon, the very much Middle Eastern racial influenced race in this game, and with the architecture. So think Ottoman Empire style architecture, 13th century era, like Byzantine Empire, mosque style, high domes, and like tall pointed spires. And with that, to me, like I'm gonna be honest. Before I saw the Nakua when I very first saw Ashes of Creation 3 years ago when we were doing Lore Seekers. I saw the Nakua and I'm like, oh wow, that's cool, you know. But the thing that really stood out to me was the Valoon, because it's something you don't see very often in an MMORPG, at least that I can recall. I think of, when I see this, I think of the movie Kingdom of Heaven and the fight that took place there with the huge armies and Jerusalem, and you're just seeing all these things take place. I think of Assassin's Creed, just anything that's really pulled on stealth, or anything that has a very high level of swordsman. That's what I see with the Valoon, and I think it's a very unique take to really bring in this Middle Eastern style culture. It's just very different, very unique, and also I know it's really a terrible movie, I guess, but I'm a huge fan of the Mummy trilogy. And then like I even enjoyed the Scorpion King.
Dwayne
so
Johnson.
You know,
love him.
Just so
You're not going to give love to Brendan Fraser on that? You go right to The Rock?
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser made the Mummy, bro.
Okay. That's cool.
When I think of that Middle Eastern culture, all the things that you said, but the one that really comes to mind that I don't think that you mentioned was the trading and the bazaar and the way that they have those open air markets where it's just stall after stall after stall of all of these opportunities to buy and sell, and there's noise and there's smells and there's sound and
Whoa,
all of that.
Smells, Sonny. What are you saying?
The meat. It's the meat. They're cooking the meat.
Oh, okay.
You know, you see that was it Indiana Jones? I'm trying to think of which one it was. It might have been Last Crusade, where he's over there, and or maybe it was Temple of Doom. All those movies like run together for me, except for the Alien one when he was like 90 years old. That one did not run together for me. But that culture
don't
of
disparage him. Don't disparage my Han Solo.
It's okay to say no, Han. You can let a franchise go.
True.
But the just the market and the trading of that culture is so unique compared to other cultures, and it's just so recognizable. When you see that, you know right away that you are dealing with that Middle Eastern culture of trade. It is fantastic. You just can't beat that. And so in MMOs, you usually see it in expansions, or they're going to go in, oh, we're going to have a Middle Eastern expansion or something like that. But to have like a core race of that, you don't see that very often.
Right.
Yeah, and that's actually part of that is completely part of their cultural focus is trade, law, hardship, just like you were saying. I think that's fantastic. And the other one that does come to mind, which I didn't want to overlook, but I think we did, but is the Red Guard from Elder Scrolls.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, nice pull.
I know,
Jeez, I can't believe
well, we only covered that. We only covered that franchise for like 3 years, dude. So it's okay, no problem.
My soul to that franchise.
Thanks for
Only
paying.
You had some sort of reference of you could have pulled from,
Thanks for paying attention during my lore lessons. I really appreciate you as a friend.
I slept the best during that.
Okay, so here's another one. We're getting down to the end of the list here, and you can't go too far without saying the Vec and Mesoamerican. So the Vec is an Orcish race, and they are pulling from that classic Aztec sort of feel and vibe, and that's cool. There's nobody that will deny that Mesoamerican Aztec cultural it just has to be called culture, right? Like it's all of it. It's the art, it's the architecture, it's the feeling of it, it's everything. That warrior mindset translates very well to your classic orcs. Now, I don't know if it's going to translate very well to your Ashes of Creation orcs, but if you were to give me a list of races and you're going to ask me which one is going to be a warrior mindset above all, I'm usually going to pick orc. So I think that they might be hinting that they're going to go down that path.
This one really does. And this is a split. So you're looking at, typically we only have one version of orc. You get one version of orc. We're getting two with Ashes, right, which I think makes it insanely amazing. I love that fact. And I know that the community was really rallying for some changes for the Renkai and we're going to cover Renkai here in a second, but Renkai were typically, the first renditions of the Renkai didn't look super orky, and they made a change to that. But with the Vec in particular, the Vec are more of like a goblin orc when you look at them, and even the traits that they have, like they're a very suspicious and sketchy race. So some of the concept art that you see, just really, you can see like they look like they're super suspicious and they're looking around, and you take that and you mix it with some of the character art that you see for the things that they wear. The cultural dress of the Vec is absolutely Mesoamerican. It's like so nailed. Like they did such a good job making them into an orc, but they made them have like all these different tribal things, so that like the nose rings and the earrings and the dress with all of the big ornate colored feathers, and they absolutely freaking nailed this one. And then the fact that they're so into the stars and into what do you call that, astrology. It, like, they nail it. So this mesh, and this is just one example of how they have taken all of these different real world cultures and just made this perfect weave into a video game race. It just blows my mind. Like, I'm really, really impressed. Like Nakua for sure. Some of these other ones they're pretty damn good, but then you look at something like the Vec, like really pay attention to how they were able to pull off making an orc look very goblin-like, and then you take a picture of an actual like ancient Mesoamerican and compare them to the way that the Vec looks. It's just art. Fantastic art.
So they're all so alluring. Every single one of these races not only is the architecture amazing, but just the races in general. So much depth to every
You make a
single
strong
one.
argument to roll an orc, and that is not something that I had considered.
Yeah, see,
I'm sorry. I feel passionate about the fact that, like I've said it before on the show, my heart just absolutely melts when a game world that I love so much can mesh with the things that actually happened in our own world. I just absolutely love and respect that.
yeah, agreed. Wow, what a question, man! That was almost the well, yeah.
We
got one more. We
got
got
one
one
more?
more.
Yeah, the Renkai. We can't.
We
forget
have the
Renkai.
Oh,
Renkai.
I'm
So
sorry. I'm sorry.
the Renkai is our last one, and that is an East Asian influence, and that's going to be your classic Chinese architecture. We've seen this a lot in games with different. Not so much with races as much, but we've seen East Asian architecture in a lot of different games. And so this is fairly trodden ground, but to apply it to a culture like the Renkai, Kash, you want to give us like 30 seconds on how you think this is going to work with that culture and this species?
I think it's going to be a very interesting mix because typically orcs they're brutal, they're savage. So the only thing that I can compare this to is like the samurai culture, because it obviously takes the Renkai obviously take an Eastern Asian, like the architecture looks very Chinese, like influences from Japan, Korea, Mongolia. So where you have those very feng shui type, they have the enclosed areas with very big open spaces, and I think what do they call them, pagodas? I think they call them pagodas, but it's very interesting to have the orcs representing the like Eastern Asian culture, because Eastern Asian culture is typically very peaceful, but can be very brutal in times of war. So maybe it's another spin on the Renkai, but they do say, like, this is actual lore from Ashes of Creation. The Renkai, they say when they're angered, you freaking run, you go, you leave, you don't want to be there, because when they berserk, like, you're done. So it's a really cool spin on both of those, on an orcish fantasy culture and like a Japanese, very peaceful yet sometimes brutal culture.
I will be intrigued by this. This reminds me of reading the book on Thrall back in the World of Warcraft, the early World of Warcraft days. They released some books, and they described from the orc standpoint of what they wanted, as opposed to the human standpoint of the orcs, which is just, these are mindless beasts that are just taking over our land and they need to be exterminated like animals. The orcs just wanted a place where they could live. And when it comes to Japanese culture, especially ancient Japanese culture, it's all about like the perfection of the task, the tea ceremony, the type of anything that you do is worth doing well. They're not out there just slaughtering for no good reason, which is what you typically, and I will even go as far as to say stereotypically, think of when you think of orcs. So I will be curious to see if they can meld that kind of concept, that these are truly a species, the Renkai, that are looking for peace, but they will defend viciously if they have to. I mean, that is obviously also an attribute of the samurai, right? Like you don't F with them when the cards are on the table, but they're not looking to start fights for no reason.
Right.
You know
there's their home.
There's no doubt in my mind there's going to be RP out there that's going to have Renkai, just full-on guilds, all dressed in samurai-style armor. That's going to be fun to watch in the book.
That'd be super cool.
They don't even have to say Banzai. They can say Renkai and do their thing. But that did not work. Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned World of Warcraft in this, and I hate to like go back and forth to World of Warcraft lore, but there was a book that I read that I absolutely loved. It was called Vol'jin Shadows of the Horde. So where like you were talking the orc side, Vol'jin Shadows of the Horde was actually when Vol'jin, who was war chief of the Horde at the time, was some stuff happened to him anyway. I won't give any spoilers, but some stuff happened to Vol'jin, which if you played the game, you'll know, but he ends up in Pandaria, and he ends up getting, he's very badly injured, and he ends up getting rehabilitated by the monks in Pandaria. So you want to talk about like a really cool deep dive into East Asian culture. Blizzard freaking nailed that one. That book is just lights out great if you're into that kind of stuff and you're into World of Warcraft lore. But it harkens right back to Ashes of Creation, and this spin that they have with the Renkai, I think could be super interesting for our peers.
How good does a book have to be to sell grown adults on pandas?
Oh my God, I feel 10 right now.
Oh, that's funny.
Thanks.
Wow. Well, this was great. Thank you again, Dragon Warden 42. And don't forget, everybody who's tuning in, you can always email us, contact@LoreForged.com, or you can call us and leave your voicemail right here on the show. We'll play it and answer the question you got. 516-875-1776. All right. So before we close out the show, I want to briefly bring this up. A quick PSA for everybody. The None Forgotten pre-order package. Very Dwarven themed, very awesome, very ritualistic, and really bringing in the idea and notion of how they honor their dead. So if you are into that, and by the way, this is the second to last pack. The last one is coming September 13th, which rumor has it is supposed to be very spooky, and it's going to be the final one. It's the final countdown.
Oh,
So
Get it before it's gone. Get it before it's gone.
But wait, there's more. No. So anyway, yeah, go check this out if you're into it. I loved it. If we had more time, we'd definitely dive into it. But anyway, it's worth a read. Very, very good. Gentlemen, this was a fun episode. Most of this episode wasn't planned. That was good.
Yeah, that was surprising, you know, when you really start to break these things down and you get into the different species. There's so much speculation on how they're going to work, but we're getting more and more information that we're able to plug into the puzzle. I got to be honest with you, the big takeaway for me was the goblin, Vec, Aztec culture thing that I'm still going to take me some time to wrap my brain around that, but that is just something that is super cool that I had not really considered. And as I look at more pictures as you were talking, you're right, they do look very squirrely. They do look like they have a very suspicious nature to them, and it would be interesting to see how that kind of story plays out and how that culture works with an orcish race.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
1000%.
I'm pretty happy about the span that they've allowed us to choose from races. I mean, you got to think of it this way. It's kind of like building a character that you really want to look at, because you're going to be staring at that character. We're going to be staring at that character's butt for thousands of hours, right? And so you got to build a character that you're going to love, and to be able to have these kind of very unique yet familiar races to choose from within this MMO, I think was just fantastic for them to take it into some offshoots that we really haven't seen much of before. So my hat's off.
Agreed. Wow, this was fun. Okay, well, to everyone who's tuning in, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll be back here next Monday on LoreForged. And before we go, if you enjoyed this show, please take a moment, let us know how we're doing, and leave us a review on whatever podcast app you're using. Just by you doing that, it allows other people just like you, other gamers just like you, to help them decide if this show is for them. And plus, we'd love to see your feedback. So anyway, you can always put that in at any podcast app. Really, I guess the written ones are only on Apple Podcasts still. So anyway, you can always call us 516-875-1776 and email us contact@LoreForged.com.
See, now this is the time when you're supposed to tell the people to leave a review after we've done the good stuff. Not after we've berated them.
Pedestal.
Sorry.
Please don't forget to visit LoreForged.com for all of our written content surrounding Ashes of Creation. If you like YouTube, which we know you do, go to YouTube.com/@ LoreForged, and you will find just so much content.
Yeah.
So very, very much content. Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. Kash quit his job. All he does now is YouTube. You can follow us on Twitch as well. We are streaming, and that is twitch.tv/LoreForgedHQ. And finally, we have a Patreon that will allow you access to everything early, plus the State of the Owl, which is our behind-the-scenes sort of after dark episode, which is already a big hit.
Oh, it was so much
Get
fun.
all of that at patreon.com/LoreForgedHQ. Kash.
You can follow us on Twitter if that's your thing. You can follow Jibs at Jibs IRL. You can follow myself at Kash Quests, and the Kash is with a K. Follow Sunny at U of Coruscant, and most importantly, don't forget to follow the show at LoreForged HQ for all of our announcements. And if you're hearing us right now, that means our Discord community is wide open for anyone to join. And I do want to give a quick shout out. We did have a bunch of friends in there right off the bat that were helping us test some things, and a massive thank you to those friends for doing so. But I believe our very first person, once we went live, was Rindal, was it not?
Yeah, I believe it was. Yes,
I think he was. So Rindal, thank you very much, man, for being the very first person to join once we have launched, and thanks again for being vocal. Like, he's being vocal in the community and talking and shaking it up and asking questions, and it's pretty cool. So anyway, man, we're glad to have you there, and everybody else who's joined us. Just hop in there. We're having some good, solid conversations, and it's just really fun to have people in there. So hopefully we'll be able to start playing some games and doing some other stuff with our community pretty soon. But come join us.
Agreed. Friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you right here next Monday on LoreForged. Take care.
Peace, love, and honeybees.